A few years ago, if you'd asked me what exercise was best for strengthening the heart, walking probably would not have made it on the list. I'd have assumed running, cycling, rowing, something intense, something that left you sweating or gasping for air. In fact, I remember walking into a gym years ago, selecting a fat loss program on a treadmill and being surprised when the machine suggested a walking pace. I genuinely thought it had malfunctioned. I increased the speed immediately, assuming if I wanted results, surely I needed to be working harder than that. At least that's what I believed at the time. Then I started looking at the research, and what surprised me wasn't that walking helped the heart. Most people already know exercise is good for the heart. What surprised me was how much benefit researchers were seeing from something as simple as regular walking. Not marathon training, not sprint intervals, not endless gym hours, simply walking. In this video, I want to explore whether walking can actually strengthen your heart. Not whether it burns calories, not whether it helps you to lose weight. We've already covered some of that. Today, I want to focus on the organ itself. I'm Leon Figures, and I'd like to thank you for taking time to listen to this video. If you like the content, enjoy the message, or find it useful, consider hitting a like, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone you think may benefit from it. So can walking improve the way your heart functions? Can it reduce your risk of heart disease? And can something as simple as walking speed affect your risk of developing heart rhythm disorders? Let's start with one of the most interesting studies I've come across. Researchers led by Dr. Lyshik wanted to examine what happens when people follow a structured walking program. Now, what immediately caught my attention about this study is that it wasn't relying on questionnaires. It wasn't simply asking whether people felt healthier. They measured heart function directly. That makes a huge difference, because when people talk about health, feelings can be misleading. Some people feel healthy while sitting on a ticking time bomb. Others feel unhealthy despite being in excellent condition. And researchers therefore used echocardiography, or to put it simply, they used the ultrasound imaging to look at the heart itself. That means they could actually observe changes in cardiac functions rather than guessing. The participants in this study were adults with type 2 diabetes, and that's important because type 2 diabetes is associated with increased cardiovascular risk. These weren't elite athletes, they weren't professional cyclists, they were people who stood to gain significant health benefits from exercise. The researchers split participants into two groups. One group followed a structured walking program. This program lasted 12 weeks. Participants completed regular walking sessions several times per week. The sessions weren't extreme. There were no military-style training, no boot camp, no endless suffering, just consistent walking. And after 12 weeks, the researchers repeated the cardiac measurements. This is where things became interesting. They observed improvements in measures of heart function. In simple terms, the heart appeared to become a more effective pump after 12 weeks of regular walking. And that's important because your heart's entire job is to deliver oxygen and nutrients around the body. If the heart can move more blood with each beat, it doesn't need to work as hard to meet the body's demands. Over time, that improved efficiency may contribute to better cardiovascular health. They also observed improvements in fitness levels and body composition. Think about what that means. The heart is a muscle. Every time you walk, your heart must pump blood into your muscles. Your legs require oxygen, your lungs provide oxygen, and your heart acts as a delivery system. Every single step represents work being done by the cardiovascular system. When that process is repeated consistently, the heart begins to adapt, and that idea became much more important to me as I got older. I now pay far more attention to my vital organs than I ever did when I was younger. When I was in my early 20s, I genuinely felt invincible. I never thought about my health, my heart. I never thought about my liver. I never thought about my long-term health. I assumed my body would just keep working regardless of what I threw at it. And to be fair, I spent a good 15 years putting that theory to the test. Then something happened when I reached my 40s. Little aches started appearing. Recovery wasn't quite as quick. My body started sending me reminders that I wasn't 20 anymore. Now I say Those aches appeared out of nowhere, but if I'm being honest, they didn't. They were probably the result of years of neglect. And I think that's an important lesson. No matter how old you are, it's far better to focus on long-term health for your vital organs before something goes wrong than to wait until you're forced to deal with a problem. Prevention is almost always better than the cure. That's one of the reasons studies like these fascinate me so much. They're not showing us how to react to illness, they're showing us how to potentially avoid it in the first place. Now, a couple of years into regular walking, I can genuinely feel the difference. My joints feel better. I can comfortably walk longer distances. And on the very few occasions I decide to jog, I can perform better than I could before. Walking hasn't magically transformed my life overnight, but it has become one of those habits that seem to improve lots of areas of health at the same time. And I think that's something we often forget. Looking after your heart isn't as glamorous as building a well-defined physique. Nobody compliments you on your healthy cardiovascular system. Nobody notices your improved heart function when you walk into a room. But our bodies are more than what we see in the mirror. We need to think about the body as a complete system. And that's one of the things that fueled my passion for creating these videos and continuing with this channel. If I can share information that encourages even a handful of people to take their long-term health more seriously, then I think that time is well spent. And that's exactly what researchers believe is happening inside the body when walking becomes a regular habit. Much like your biceps adapt to lifting weights, much like your legs adapt to climbing stairs, the heart adapts to regular demand. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, walking doesn't transform your heart into that of an Olympic athlete, but that's not the point. The point is that the heart appears capable of becoming more efficient through regular walking, and efficiency matters. Imagine two engines. One needs to work extremely hard to produce a certain output. The other produces the same output while using less effort. Most of us will choose the more efficient engine. The same principle applies to the heart. A stronger, more efficient heart can move blood around the body more effectively, and that's one reason researchers continue to see benefits from walking. But let's zoom out. Because whenever I discuss a single study, I always remember something important. One study is still one study, no matter how interesting the findings are. So let's look at a bigger picture. One of the most remarkable things about heart disease is that it remains one of the leading causes of death worldwide. Heart attacks, heart failure, stroke, cardiovascular disease affects millions of people. And that's why researchers spend so much time trying to identify behaviours that reduce risk. Walking repeatedly appears near the top of the list. Now you might be wondering why. What is it about walking that seems so beneficial? The answer appears to be that walking influences multiple risk factors simultaneously. It can help control body weight. It can help improve blood pressure. It can help improve insulin sensitivity. It can improve cholesterol profiles. It can reduce inflammation, and it can improve cardiovascular fitness. In other words, walking attacks the problem from multiple angles at once, and that's powerful because the heart disease rarely develops because of one thing. It's usually a combination of factors accumulating over time. Excess weight, poor blood sugar, high blood pressure, lack of activity, poor cardiovascular fitness, years of small problems eventually becoming one large problem. Walking appears capable of improving several of these variables simultaneously. One large study looked at adults with hypertension. That's high blood pressure. Researchers examined step counts and cardiovascular outcomes. What they discovered was fascinating. People who accumulated more daily steps generally experienced lower cardiovascular risk. Importantly, the benefits weren't reserved for people hitting huge step counts. Risk appeared to fall gradually as steps increase. The relationship wasn't all or nothing. It wasn't a case of walk 10,000 steps or don't bother. Instead, benefits appeared gradually. More movement gradually produces better outcomes. I think that's incredibly encouraging because so many people approach health with an all or nothing mindset. If they can't do anything, they can't, then they do nothing. If they can't spend an hour of exercising, they don't spend 10 minutes exercising. If they can't achieve perfection, they abandon progress. The research doesn't support that mindset. The research suggests movement matters, additional movement matters, and walking appears to be one of the simplest ways of increasing movement. Now, let's talk about something many people overlook. Heart function and heart disease are not exactly the same thing. Heart function refers to how well the heart performs its job. Heart disease refers to the conditions that affect the heart. The two are related, but they aren't identical. You think of it like maintaining a car. A well-maintained engine is less likely to break down. The same principle often applies to the heart. Improving cardiovascular fitness tends to reduce cardiovascular risk. And that's where walking becomes so interesting because unlike many forms of exercise, most people can continue doing it for decades. That's a huge advantage. The best exercise program isn't necessarily the one that produces the fastest results. The best exercise program is often the one you'll still be doing 10 years from now. Walking has a remarkable ability to fit into real life. You can walk before work, after work, during lunch, on holiday, or listen to a podcast while speaking to a friend, while thinking things through. Walking doesn't demand that life stops so exercise can begin. It often integrates directly into life, and that may be one of the greatest strengths. Now let's move on from another area of research that I find particularly fascinating, walking speed. Most people focus entirely on distance. How far did I walk? How many steps did I take? How many calories did I burn? But researchers are becoming increasingly interested in walking speed. And what they've discovered is remarkable. Large studies have found that people who naturally walk at faster speeds often experience lower rates of cardiovascular problems. Now, before anyone starts walking at a damn near sprinting pace, let's be clear. This doesn't mean everybody must walk quickly, but it does suggest that walking pace may provide useful information about cardiovascular health. Researchers using data from hundreds of thousands of participants found that average-paced and brisk walkers had significantly lower risk of developing heart rhythm disorders compared with slow walkers. Importantly, these findings are made even after researchers adjusted for many other cardiovascular factors. The findings that caught my attention because most people think about heart attacks when discussing heart health. A few people think about heart rhythm disorders. The heart doesn't just need to pump, it also needs to beat correctly. Your heart relies on an electrical system. Tiny electrical signals coordinate each heartbeat. When those signals become disrupted, heart rhythm disorders can occur. Some are relatively harmless, others can be serious. What surprised researchers was the relationship between walking speed and these conditions. People who walked at a brisk pace generally experienced lower risk. Why might that happen? Researchers are still investigating, but there are several possibilities. Brisk walking tends to improve cardiovascular fitness. Brisk walking challenges the heart slightly more. Brisk walking may improve blood vessel function. Brisk walking often reflects overall physical capability. Whether the exact mechanism, the relationship is intriguing, and it highlights something important. Not all walking needs to be leisurely. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a gentle walk. Any movement is genuinely better than none, but occasionally, increasing the pace may provide additional benefits. Think of it as giving the cardiovascular system a slightly greater challenge, not enough to overwhelm it, just enough to encourage adaptation. Now, I want to emphasize something. Whenever people hear about studies like this, they sometimes become discouraged. They think, I'm overweight, I'm out of shape, I can't walk quickly. If that's what you're thinking, you've completely missed the point. The people who benefit most from walking are often the people who start from the lowest baseline. You don't need to compare yourself with somebody fitter. You only need to compare yourself with the version of you that was moving less. That's one of the most empowering aspects of walking. Progress is highly individual. For one person, a brisk walk may be 6 miles per hour. For another person, it may be 3 miles per hour. The important thing is improvement, not comparison. As I researched this topic, one thing kept appearing again and again: consistency, not intensity, consistency. The strongest cardiovascular benefits weren't coming from the heroic workout, they weren't coming from one incredible month, they were coming from repeated activity performed over long periods of time. That's exactly why walking excels at. It's difficult to perform high intensity interval training every day for years. It's difficult to run hard every day for years. It's difficult to maintain extreme exercise habits indefinitely. Walking is different. Walking can become part of your identity, part of your routine, part of your lifestyle. And when that happens, the benefits accumulate week after week, month after month, year after year. The research suggests your heart notices, your blood vessels notice, your metabolism notices, and eventually your health notices. Now let's bring everything together. The Leipzig study suggests regular walking can improve measures of cardiac function. The larger cardiovascular studies suggest walking is associated with lower risk of major heart-related events. Research involving hundreds of thousands of participants suggests walking at faster speeds are associated with a lower risk of heart rhythm disorders. 3 different areas of research, 3 different questions, yet all pointing to remarkably similar direction. Walking appears to be doing far more than simply burning calories. It influencing the cardiovascular system itself, and that's why I think walking deserves far more respect than it receives. For years I underestimated it. Many people still do, because walking doesn't look impressive. Nobody posts a social media highlight reel of a 30-minute walk. Nobody receives admiration for walking around the block. Nobody feels like a superhero while taking a lunchtime stroll. But health doesn't care about appearances. Your heart doesn't care whether an activity looks impressive. Your cardiovascular system doesn't care whether your workout is fashionable. What matters is stimulus, and walking provides one again and again and again. And that consistency may be exactly why it works. So, can walking strengthen your heart? The evidence suggests yes. Can it improve cardiovascular health? The evidence suggests yes. Can it reduce the risk of developing serious cardiovascular problems? The evidence suggests yes. And perhaps most importantly, can most people actually do it? Absolutely. Walking is free, walking is accessible, walking is sustainable, and according to a growing body of scientific evidence, walking may be one of the simplest investments you can make in your long-term health for your heart. Because the goal isn't simply living longer. The goal is helping your body that carries you through your life function as well as possible for as long as possible. And walking appears to be one of the simplest ways to help make that happen. In the next video, we're going to explore another surprising benefit of walking and look at what research tells us. You get one body, fuel it properly.